Hi, I'm Reese, President and CEO of Sussex Rural Electric Cooperative. I am pleased to have with me today Steve Brame, President and CEO of Allegheny Electric Co-op and Pennsylvania Rural Electric Association.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me, and I want to thank all the members for inviting me to the annual meeting and this question and answer session. I'm really looking forward to it. Jersey's like a second home to me, so it's nice to be here.
Appreciate having you here. Normally for this meeting, I have recorded some questions and answers with our members that sent in questions. To change it up this year, I thought I'd get to ask the questions of you.
So I'm on the hot seat.
Absolutely.
Love it.
It's very
Let's
hot.
go.
All right, first question. Past 4 years, federal government has been pushing for carbon-free power generation sources, specifically replacing fossil fuel plants with renewable power, namely wind and solar.
Yeah.
But with the change in presidency this past January, government's made a big U-turn on energy policy. Is this good or bad? And how does that affect Allegheny and its 14 electric co-ops, Sussex included?
I think the first thing I would say is that with every election, there are consequences, right? Mm-hmm. And in 2020, we had an election where the Biden administration came in with a fairly significant change in idea about how we generate power for use by our consumer members. Their idea was we want to try to get as carbon-free as we possibly can. That was 2020. In 2024, we had an election with the Trump administration coming in where they are fundamentally changing that vision for the country. As you can imagine, for those of us in the power industry, it's really difficult to plan under those sets of circumstances when you're doing what I like to call the windshield wiper effect of public policy. Now, what I would say is I use the term policy loosely. These are not really policies. These are ideas that people have. They last for 4 years, maybe 8, but then get changed in the next election. So it's very, very difficult for those of us in the industry to maintain our focus on safe, reliable, and affordable power and providing that resource or that service to our consumer members when it's changing all the time in Washington or Trenton or in Harrisburg. So from that perspective, it's very challenging. Now, what I would say is from where we sit as electric cooperatives, we want as many resources on the grid as we possibly can have. And that means the always available dispatchable power that we've used for 100 years, including coal and natural gas and nuclear, we want those resources on the grid as well. We also want and understand the need to try to do power generation in a more environmentally responsible manner. And that means solar, and that may mean offshore wind and other things. We're fine with that, but we can't have just one or the other. We have to have a multiplicity of options on the power grid. For us, as electric cooperatives, we feel like we are positioned well in this challenging time because we own some of our generation, including our workhorse nuclear power plant at Susquehanna Steam Electric Station along the Susquehanna River in north central Pennsylvania. We have some hydro resources as well, and we do utilize the market for about 30% of our power generation needs. Having more entrants into the marketplace is better for us. So from that perspective, the more the better. The other thing I would add is this windshield wiper effect really leads us to something that we've been working on together, Chris, for a long time, which is we need a energy policy in this country. We don't need a state-by-state energy policy. We need the federal government to have a real thoughtful conversation about what energy policy is going to look like in the future. In the energy industry, in the electric industry, we make planning decisions on 15, 20, and 25-year time horizons. Now think about that with respect to what we talked about earlier in terms of the elections. Every 4 years, some new energy policy, quote unquote policy, is being mandated on us. It's impossible to make those decisions. So from the cooperative perspective, we feel good about where we are vis-a-vis everybody else because of our power supply strategy, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. But we also recognize we desperately need an energy policy in this country, and we're hopeful that the current administration and the Congress will engage in a thoughtful conversation about that.
Excellent answer. I really appreciate that. It leads me to my next question, just about New Jersey itself. As you know, and probably our members as well, There's been a lot of news in New Jersey lately about this year's power supply auction run by the BPU. That resulted in about a 20% rate increase for the 4 investor-owned utilities in the state. That covers 99% of the state's homes, and they're looking at about $25 more per month on their bills beginning around June 1st. Sussex REC is not part of that auction, and as a result, our members will have one of the lowest, if not the lowest rate for residentials in New Jersey. At the same time, we'll be providing our members 80% carbon-free power from Allegheny Electric, while the state's average mix is about 55%. Now, I know everyone, including our members, is dealing with high prices, not just in electricity, but in kind of everything right now. But in terms of electricity, why are we doing so much better or looking so much better than the rest of the state? How is that possible? What is Allegheny doing for power purchases and power supply, and even how are things looking over the next couple of years for us?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is congratulations to all of you for living on Sussex Rural Electric Cooperative lines. That's a great decision and speaks very highly of you, especially after what Chris just said about the energy market in New Jersey. I know some of your legislators are talking about it right now in Trenton, and certainly in Pennsylvania and Maryland and other places. They're talking about this escalating energy prices and electric prices all around PJM and really the country. One of the things I would say is a lot of this has to do with what we were talking about first. You know, energy prices are going up very simply as a result of supply and demand. And when you have a situation where supply is dwindling and demand is going up, what happens?
Basic laws.
Yeah, it's just basically, it's basic economics. Costs go up. And what we're seeing is demand is being driven by things like artificial intelligence, data centers, even the way we drive our cars now and heat our homes and power our houses. So one of the things that I would say is this should not be a surprise to anyone. Now for us as electric cooperatives, one of the strengths that I think we have is our power supply strategy. You know, in New Jersey, the investor-owned utilities don't own their own generation assets. So they're beholden to the marketplace. And again, we've already talked about market power, the availability of power is decreasing. Costs are going up. For Allegheny and for electric cooperatives in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, our power supply is roughly 70% owned generation. I already mentioned Susquehanna Steam Electric Station. That 10% share that we own with our partner Talent Energy provides us over 60% or nearly 60% of our energy needs for our entire system in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. We have a hydro asset at Raystown Lake in south central Pennsylvania, and we get energy from hydro assets at the New York Power Authority as well. All told, that 70% of our power comes from carbon-free resources. So we're not seeing the pressure to identify or look for new carbon-free resources to meet any mandates or things that the federal government or state governments have. We also own those kilowatt hours, so to speak. They're ours. They're being paid for by our consumer members on an ongoing basis. That means 30% is our exposure to the marketplace. So in situations like in New Jersey, where IOUs are forced to get all of their power from the marketplace, our exposure is 70% less than that. And that means something on cost. Now, what I would say is our overall strategy, our overall power supply strategy really revolves around affordability. And the neat thing about our power supply strategy is it allows us to take advantage of some of the challenges that we're seeing today and turn them into opportunities. And I'll give you an example of that. In 2022, the Biden administration passed legislation called the Inflation Reduction Act that included a program called New Era, New Empowering Rural America. It's really a program that's designed to incentivize carbon-owning generation assets to move towards carbon-free generation. Now, obviously, we've already talked about we're a very, very carbon-free generation supplier, G&T in our words. But because we're always looking for ways to mitigate increase in costs, or looking and understanding that affordability matters to our consumer members, we identified an opportunity within that program to find even more carbon-free resources for us going forward. And ultimately what that has meant is we have received, as a cooperative program, a $20.5 million grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture for a 5-year, 30 megawatt block of carbon-free power. Now, ultimately what that means is over that 5-year time frame, our consumer members are going to save $15 million. $15 million is a lot of money. And that helps us try to achieve or try to mitigate this increasing costs that we're seeing across our system. Now, I'll also say that we are going to be over 80% carbon free with that new 30 megawatt block. That will make us among the most carbon free generation providers in the country, not just in the Northeast. That's something to be very excited about. And so I think our strategy is what makes the difference for us, and it's something that we like to call the cooperative difference. We aren't driven by shareholder value. We're not driven by trying to increase our stock price. Our owners are our consumer members, and that's what matters to us. So we want to make sure that we are as affordable as we possibly can to our consumer members in Sussex Rural Electric Cooperative Service Territory.
Love to hear it. It really emphasizes the point that we've been trying to make for years of how we are the highest quality of service at the lowest possible cost.
Yeah.
Thanks. And change topics a little bit from those first two questions and narrow our focus a little bit to the organizational level.
Sure.
I'd like to ask you to touch on some of the other ways Sussex Rural Electric benefits from its membership in PREA and its ownership of Allegheny Electric Co-op. Can you talk about some things like the coordination of mutual aid in storms or training and safety of our linemen, even programs for future co-op members like youth tour and scholarships?
Sure. Well, I appreciate that question. I think one of the things that drives us at PREA and Allegheny is the notion that electric cooperatives are their communities. You know, we are not electric utilities in the sense that we have a headquarters in some states, 6 states over. You know, you serve here in Sussex County, and you serve in Northwest New Jersey, and that matters. You're headquartered here. We're sitting here in Sussex County, and so that matters. So everything is local, and I think that makes us better as in the utility industry, to be very honest with you. At PREA and Allegheny, we try to provide the resources that allow our member distribution cooperatives to achieve those goals in their local communities. You touched on one that I think is really important, which is mutual assistance. And as we sit here today, our colleagues out in Western Pennsylvania are dealing with a fairly significant summer storm that really impacted their community in significant ways. And our mutual assistance program leverages all of us being cooperatives together. We have 13 members in Pennsylvania, you guys in New Jersey, and everybody has mutual assistance agreements with each other. So when one co-op gets into trouble with a lengthy outage, a winter storm, ice storm, I know you guys have dealt with all of the above. You know, when one co-op's disadvantaged, others come to help. And not only does that happen through PREA, but our line personnel get to know each other over time. And so these systems are not unusual to them. And so they're able to help safely, which is, I think, the next thing I would want to touch on, which is our job training and safety program, which allows each member distribution cooperative to achieve their individual safety goals through a menu of services that our job training and safety program at PREA offers to allow our line personnel to have continuing education and be the most up-to-date, safest they possibly can be in addressing the needs of their electrical system at their individual cooperative. You touched on a couple other things that go to this local level as well. We have a scholarship program. You know, we've provided over $400,000 in scholarships over the last 2 decades. We also have the youth tour program, which is maybe the most unique thing I think I've ever seen in a 30-year career in and around this industry. Our youth tour program takes youth, some of whom who have never left their home county. And these juniors in high school get an opportunity to go for a week to Washington, D.C. They learn about their electric cooperative. They learn about our government. They learn about the interaction between public policy and the way things work in their local communities. They meet people from other places in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And it's the most unique thing I think I've ever seen. I think this year we have close to 100 students who are going down to Washington, spending time with each other, learning about their government, learning about their co-op. The thing that I'm always reminded of is every time I've walked into a congressional office, turned on a news channel, I see a Youth Tour alumnus who is on Youth Tour and is giving back to their community in some way. And it's neat to be a part of that as part of PREA and Allegheny.
It's incredible the uniqueness that the cooperative program has, right, compared to even not just other utilities, but other businesses. That outreach and the mutual aid, Sussex has absolutely benefited from numerous times over the years, both giving and receiving. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate everything that PREA does for us.
Great, thanks.
Now, I've saved the hardest question for last.
Yo, I love it. Let's go.
And this is a two-part question.
Got it.
Member Appreciation Day is at the Sussex County Fairgrounds on Monday, August 4th from 12 to 8 p.m. Details can be found on our website, sussexrec.com. Steve, you've attended at least 2, maybe 3 of the last events that we've done at the fairgrounds. So the first question is, will you or anyone from Allegheny be stopping in at the event this year? And number 2, what has been your go-to fair food on your previous visits?
These are good questions. These are the tough questions.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I have a conflict, but my colleague Pete Fitzgerald, who's our Vice President of Public Affairs and Member Services and attended the fair with me last year, will be stopping by this year in Sussex County, and we look forward to you welcoming him, all of you welcoming him to the fair.
So you got to recommend then to him what that food would be.
Well, right next door to your venue is the 4-H Dairy Barn, and the chocolate shake is to die for. So that's my favorite food. I in a past life I travel around to a lot of state fair, county fairs in Pennsylvania, and one of the things I learned was you have to try a milkshake at each fair. And the one in Sussex County is pretty darn good. The other thing I would add to all of you out there is it's really nice to be invited by Sussex to your local fair. I am not a cooperative consumer in Pennsylvania. I have to get my power from an investor-owned utility. And the only thing they invite me to do is pay my bill on a monthly basis. They never invite me to a local meeting, an annual meeting, or even let us participate in an annual meeting. So it truly is part of the cooperative difference to get an invitation to come to the fair.
Well, we look forward to having you at future events. We'll welcome Pete when he's there. And I thank you for coming and answering the tough questions today. Appreciate it, Steve.
Thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.